There's no question that artificial intelligence is becoming a bigger part of everyday retail life. We're already seeing it roll out in major supermarkets, where AI systems are designed to detect whether customers actually scan every item at self-checkout. And Walmart has been one of the biggest names testing this technology. But here's the thing, people adapt fast. Some shoppers figured out ways around it almost immediately, swapping barcodes and manipulating the system. And honestly, should anyone be surprised, expecting complete honesty at a self-checkout kiosk was always a stretch. Now, Walmart did have a strategy for a while. They'd track repeat offenders quietly, let the losses accumulate over 2 or 3 visits, and then move in with an arrest once the stolen total crossed a significant threshold. The logic was to build a stronger legal case, but even that approach has a major flaw. By the time the arrest happens, the merchandise is already gone and consumed. There's no recovering that loss. So what's the conclusion major retailers are quietly arriving at? It's actually cheaper to bring back human cashiers, which is remarkable considering how aggressively these same companies pushed self-checkout as the future of retail just a few years ago. Those decisions cost a lot of workers their jobs, and now the math is shifting back the other way. Expect to see this change roll out gradually across major chains. Home Depot, Lowe's, and other high theft volume retailers are all likely to follow. Moving on, Drake is gearing up to release his next project, currently referred to as Iceman. He's been spotted filming in the streets of Toronto, surrounded by ice blocks, staying true to the theme. And from what's being reported, he may be sitting on a significant body of work, potentially 5 to 10 videos ready to drop in quick succession to keep the momentum going. Whether the project delivers is a separate question. We'll find out soon enough, as the release is expected to land next Friday. The anticipation is there, but so is the skepticism. The rap world will be watching closely. Meanwhile, a woman named Tatiana, who is publicly identified as the ex-girlfriend of an artist known as Boston Richie, is now moving forward with plans to release a documentary. She recently came forward stating that 15 women reached out to her, sharing personal experiences and trauma connected to Boston Richie, with some choosing to remain anonymous. She has expressed her commitment to supporting everyone who came to her. It's worth noting that Boston Richie has denied the allegations made against him. These are unverified claims at this stage, and no legal findings have been established. However, the mounting public pressure and the documentary in development suggest this situation is far from over. Shifting gears, Dame Dash has been making headlines again, this time denying any romantic involvement with Beyoncé. According to Dash, the long-standing tension between himself and Jay-Z stems from Jay-Z's belief that something happened between the two, which Dash insists is not true. Here's the broader issue, though. Dame Dash built a genuinely impressive legacy in hip-hop. He was instrumental in launching careers, building Rockefeller Records into a powerhouse, and pushing hip-hop culture forward at a critical moment. But the constant public commentary, calling out Jay-Z, Steve Stout, Leor Cohen, Cameron, Memphis Bleek, and others, hasn't added anything meaningful to that legacy. It's actually chipped away at it. There's something self-defeating about a person who loudly criticizes others for gossiping while consistently being the one doing the most talking. Dame Dash built his public persona around accountability and keeping it real, but the behavior doesn't always line up with the message. He helped a lot of people get to where they are, and that deserves respect. But the ongoing feuds and public grievances have overshadowed the contributions. The falling out with Cameron is a good example of how far things went, and the dynamic with Jim Jones tells a similar story. Cameron, for all his bluntness, has a reputation for being fair. Jim Jones, not so much. When Cameron publicly referred to Jim Jones as a fan, that said everything about where that relationship stands, and it's unlikely to recover. On the topic of Jay-Z, is he the greatest rapper in hip-hop? Probably not. But is he one of the greatest businessmen the culture has ever produced? Without question. The issue is that his music catalog hasn't resonated with younger generations the way you might expect from someone of his stature.
Artists like Nas, Kanye West, and even Drake have shown stronger longevity in terms of how their music translates across different generations. Even 50 Cent's catalog seems to connect more broadly with newer audiences. It's hard to pinpoint exactly why Jay-Z's music hasn't crossed over to the younger demographic as strongly, but the pattern is noticeable. On the film side, T.I. is reportedly moving forward with a biographical movie about his own life, backed by Empire, Apple Music, and his Grand Hustle imprint. That's a project worth keeping an eye on. And on the music front, T.I. is also riding a wave right now with a record that has crossed 30 million streams, which by any measure qualifies as a hit. Some of that momentum was amplified by 50 Cent's involvement and attention around the track, but the song stands on its own. It's good to see T.I. still putting out relevant music. Alongside Jeezy, Outkast, Scarface, and Rick Ross, he's always been one of the defining voices out of the South. Finally, French Montana has done right by Max B, helping to secure his release and standing by him publicly. But there's another layer to this story worth acknowledging. Both French Montana and Rick Ross now find themselves in a position where they can leverage Max B's return to generate fresh momentum. Neither of them has Drake in their corner anymore, and this collaboration, tied to a mixtape expected at the end of May, gives all three artists
something to work with. Max B stands to benefit financially, while French and Ross benefit from the cultural energy his return brings. It's a mutually beneficial situation, but it's worth seeing it for what it is. And that wave they're riding has its limits. Rick Ross jumped on the momentum, linking up for a Miami-flavored record to keep things moving. But when you look at the actual numbers, the song is sitting under 2 million streams and has essentially stalled out. By any honest measure, that's not a hit record. The growth has plateaued, and the momentum isn't building the way they'd need it to. So yes, French Montana and Rick Ross are working the wave, and that's fine. But there's a real challenge hiding underneath the surface of this Versus setup. A significant portion of their biggest collaborative records feature Drake. So when it comes time to actually perform those songs or celebrate those catalog moments, what happens? Who gets credit for a record that only popped because of a featured artist who's no longer in either camp? The cleanest version of this Versus would actually be no feature songs at all. Strip it down to just French and Ross on their own material, and honestly, Ross would have the stronger footing. French Montana has hits, but in a head-to-head lyrical and catalog comparison, without outside assistance, Ross pulls ahead. Pop That is a great example. That record has Drake, Lil Wayne, and Rick Ross on it alongside French. You can't really count that in French's column. Those collaborative records belong to the moment, not to either artist individually. Moving on, Offset has reportedly reunited with Quavo in the studio. After everything that played out publicly between them, it's genuinely good to see that door potentially reopening. Gunplay recently spoke out about the infamous incident involving DJ Vlad, in which Gunplay struck Vlad over the head with a bottle. The backstory traces back to 2009, when Vlad, through reporting from the Smoking Gun, helped surface allegations that Rick Ross had worked as a correctional officer prior to his rap career. Rick Ross initially denied everything, but after sustained public pressure over the following year, he eventually acknowledged the truth, though he maintained that he was also involved in the drug trade during that period. Here's the thing, though. Vlad didn't deserve to be physically attacked for reporting factual information. That's a line that shouldn't have been crossed. And Gunplay publicly taking credit for it now isn't exactly a great look either. There's nothing worth bragging about there. Big Meech has been speaking publicly about his belief that the government blocked his path to becoming a legitimate entrepreneur. He's pointed to his record label and other business ventures as examples of where he was trying to build something legal. But let's be straightforward about this. The record label wasn't generating real traction. The car business had been documented as a vehicle for laundering drug proceeds, and multiple people in his circle cooperated with investigators, including someone who wrote a book, 2 associates caught with a substantial amount of cocaine, and recorded phone conversations involving his own brother. the government had a serious case. Meech has stated that he and his brother Terry accepted a plea deal, partly to protect their parents from being indicted, and that part of the story does carry weight. But the framing that he was on the verge of going fully legitimate doesn't quite hold up to scrutiny. You can't run both operations simultaneously and expect it to work out. History shows that almost never ends well. The people who successfully transitioned from the streets to legitimate business did it by fully stepping away from one before committing to the other. Meech didn't make that separation. He also referenced a comparison made by Minister Louis Farrakhan, drawing a parallel between the Kennedy family's transition from bootlegging to legitimate wealth and Meech's situation, asking why the same opportunity wasn't extended. It's a thought-provoking argument, and there's probably some truth buried in it when it comes to how power and race shape those outcomes. But the Kennedy family also built elaborate financial structures, stock investments, political capital, and business frameworks that created the appearance of legitimacy over time. Meech didn't have that infrastructure in place. Every business entity he operated was tied directly back to drug proceeds, with very little separation. On the Boston Richie situation, Tekashi 6ix9ine has announced he plans to address the topic publicly, with Boston Richie, also known as Strap Hunt Richie, being one of the main subjects he'll be speaking on. Additionally, Coup has publicly stated that Boston Richie is bringing negative attention